The AI wave isn't coming, it's already crashing over the shoreline, and compliance teams are standing knee-deep in foam, wondering if they need a wetsuit or a life raft. That's a quote from the 2025 white paper, Making the Black Box Accountable from Rayco Consulting. Today's webinar, we're exploring compliance design for human-in-the-loop oversight and agent-level monitoring, the real reason why AI hasn't shown productivity gains for financial institutions until now. I'm joined by two leaders in AI compliance in the financial sector, Christina Rea, founder at Rayco Consulting, and Bruno, founder at scalata.ai. Today, what we're going to do is we'll have a short webinar. We're for a total of 30 minutes, so we're really diving into the value. We're going to go through our topics. We'll have a quick demo too of how Scalata is creating the type of oversight we're talking about, and then we'll have a short Q&A after. So stay here. And before we go anywhere, I want you both to answer this in one sentence. What's the most dangerous assumptions that banks are making about AI right now? Christina, let's start with you.
One sentence. I will do my best to be brief. I think that the most dangerous assumptions banks are making right now is that AI behaves like software versus treating it like the junior analyst level of process that they should be training it as. In addition to skirting the label of model by saying that AI agents aren't models. I think that's one sentence, but I'd be remiss if I didn't add at the end that the regulators don't really care what you call it. If it fits their criteria for model under current model risk management frameworks, they will still regulate it as such.
Well, don't worry, because I know that Bruno would never stick to one sentence. So you're in good company.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
No, good. So Bruno.
In one sentence, I'd say that they think that AI is predictable and under control. We're just at the beginning. Basically, this is a limitless framework, and agents are becoming self-aware if you don't control it. Okay. So the situation is becoming self-aware massively, okay? And so we're just at the beginning. You need to have a proper control policy and guardrails. Some providers are putting this into place. Yeah.
Thank you, Bruno. All right. So, Christina, you've said some decisions should never be made solely by machines. What do you mean by that? And what is designed for human-in-the-loop oversight?
Okay, this is where it gets fun and it gets spicy because I have said that. I've been on webinars, AI webinars before, where I've been specifically asked if AI can be kind of completely autonomous in compliance decisions, even low-level ones. My current answer at this point in time is no. I know that that's not an opinion shared by everybody. So let me dive into it a little bit more, and then I'm always happy to answer questions later on. When I say some decisions should never be made solely by machines, I mean decisions that require judgment, context, and accountability. AI is an adaptive system. Once it really starts getting into interpreting edge cases, you need human guardrails really by design. And this is why, something called human in the loop oversight matters. You'll see that a lot as human in the loop, or it'll be abbreviated as HITL. So many acronyms here. Oversight isn't something you really add later. I think Bruno will probably get into this when he's speaking as well. It's an architectural choice. Before any system goes live, you should be able to answer 4 questions. Which decisions require human approval? No exceptions to that. Where are your mandatory checkpoints? Not review when you think of it or when you feel like it, but what is the required workflow? What gets escalated automatically and what criteria trigger that kind of escalation? And is the human review a documented step or just an unofficial expectation? So I know that there's a lot of companies out there that think that their AI, whatever it ends up being for, I know they're marketing it as, it's fully autonomous. It can take the place of, in my world and dealing with compliance specifically, it can take the place of lower level analysts. I have yet to see a use case or an instance where that is 100% true 100% of the time. And being a person that's been beaten up by compliance in the financial world for some time, I tend to be a little bit more conservative. That said, it doesn't mean it can't adapt and change in the future. But I think at this moment in time, when even the regulators don't know what to ask, it's important to be more cautious, than not. Like a tip, like an example is, say a mid-sized institution deploys, generative AI underwriting tool, which is very popular. Generative AI is being used a lot in borrowing and lending. In the pilot, it looked great, but once live, the model began improvising on unclear instructions, which is exactly what a new analyst would do, to my point earlier about this is more, analyst level than software level. And it came to be found that the failure wasn't the model specifically, it was that it was missing checkpoints for ambiguous outputs. So there was, no governance, no supervision, which I really get into, in my white paper, how to govern AI. And this is why design matters. If you don't build supervision into your workflows, and you need to be super specific with your wireframes and your workflows, you'll be supervising after the damage. And that's true for any component, of the build in whether it's AI, whether it's, any other part of tech. Compliance officers are often supervising after the damage.
Christina, I know from talking to you before that, yeah, you're not afraid to have an unpopular opinion, and neither is Bruno. I also know from you as well. So it's great to have you both in the room. And this is the first time that you guys are really connecting. So we're seeing any differences in real time of opinions and ideas, and from two different perspectives. Bruno, as a fintech founder and creating generative AI for the use cases Christina had mentioned. And yeah, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so first of all, Christina, excellent, basic overview of the the general requirements. And really these policy guardrails, they've been design patterns, of 2025, really. Only now you see really the requirement, the need for that, okay? The explosion of is mostly, agentic, because the model really, when you adopt models, they're not going to give you basically guardrails. You just use the API inside your implementation. But it's really this new, obviously, agentic platforms, which is basically the replacement of the old codes. Agents are nothing more than codes, okay? It's just a different way of calling a model and a technology interaction within a code to a prescriptive approach. But I do support this idea that, each B2B implementation in general should have at the beginning of it, on the one hand, a framework to build your policy, okay? So you see, the path to implementing a compliant framework, which is what financial institutions in general should have, is made up of three fundamentally building blocks. First of all is the policy, and you need to enable the fact that they need to either build or import a general policy. Now, what is the limitation today? They all think about data privacy. They think about data privacy. That's it. That's all they're concerned. Data privacy, their own data, or the data that's coming from outside affecting the model. Why? It's like when internet came about, people were sending email instructions via faxes to each other at the beginning of internet. Yeah. So yeah, was the fax, machine there. There was no, basically, there was no, some guys didn't have the other email or the modem. So they were kind of communicating to each other via the fax, the setup of the internet. And we're doing exactly the same. So you need to provide a preempted policy structure. You need to teach them, and you need to enable them to pick and choose. They're not going to do it. You know, compliance officers, CTOs, they're not going to do it. Secondly, while they deploy the agents in any B2B platform, then, you know, you need to provide, obviously, the second building block is the guardrail. So the policy is the strategy. The guardrail is the tactic. You know, when you, deploy your, if you like, what is called, you know, go-to-market strategy. We're talking about go-to-market in AI. The guardrail is the tactic. You go and you deploy your tactics. So it's the control. And the third one is obviously what Christina, you know, mentioned clearly, is the human oversight. Okay, who is going to monitor that? So you need to provide that kind of thing. So at Scalata, we did that. We are improving on it. We didn't do this straight away. I felt, and I realized that there was even more need to be doing this because our agentic platform is very recent. We moved from version 2 to version 3. Obviously, because I really felt that while dealing with small financial institutions, the incredible thing is that they have zero idea about compliance. They just use Perplexity, ChatGPT across the board. And we're talking about also funds with 50 billion in asset under management, AUM. They're using ChatGPT. They're using Perplexity inside their premises, which is crazy if you think about that. Okay. So, so we need to educate the public more. And if we do not do this at the startup level, and there is no regulation, at the moment, the biggest thing in USA, there is no regulator whatsoever. There's no punishment. No one is enforcing it. No one is doing anything about it. And that's, to me, it's not healthy.
Christina, do you have any thought on what Bruno said about, in the US specifically, people using Perplexity, ChatGPT inside these institutions? And
yeah, he's exactly right. That is happening. Perplexity, ChatGPT, Copilot, you know, a lot of institutions have their own version of Copilot. I mean, I have clients that are utilizing ChatGPT. It's useful in the sense that if there's a component or an operation of compliance that you're not terribly familiar with, to me, it's like a quicker, you know, dive into like Wikipedia. It's pulling all of the Wikipedia info and giving you, you know, a very comprehensive answer. But when you're then utilizing it to start taking over, you know, your specific company tasks, you know, there's privacy considerations, you know, there's security considerations. And there's also the fact that, you know, AI gets a lot of stuff wrong. This is a case from Australia, not the US, but I don't know how many people read the article, I think a couple months ago now, about the Deloitte AI scandal in Australia. Deloitte was using AI in a government report in Australia. I don't know if it was ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever the, you know, the system was, but somebody didn't check it, and they actually presented an official report to the Australian government that had significant factual errors, like fake citations. ChatGPT is known for this. It pulls the information maybe accurately, but it doesn't always cite correctly. And it does tend to hallucinate and drift. So sometimes you'll assume that it knows exactly 100% what you're asking and the context in which you're asking it. And it doesn't necessarily know that. It's trying to give you the right answer and make you happy, but you don't really understand, you know, all of the sources and all of the places that information is coming from and being consolidated. So it might sound legit and factual, but it's not always that way. Yeah, so I expect to see a lot more of these cases in the news of exactly this, because, what you don't really understand, but sounds legit. And we do this all the time, it's psychological with people. If somebody sounds like they know what they're talking about, we assume that they do, but that isn't necessarily the case. And the same with AI. I think people are getting a little too comfortable relying on it without fully understanding, how it works and how to validate, what it's saying.
Bruno, any other thoughts here?
Yeah. So first of all, I support what Christina just said. These tools are very generic. And they're built for retail, the public. When you look at the B2B, it's an enterprise level. You need to basically personalize the use cases, okay? And you need to control them. You can't pretend that these tools are a supportive, I would say, software application for your own daily job, okay? And so and building it yourself in a kind of in a company, in a financial institution, it's expensive too, okay? So so what I see in general, I see on the one hand, a lack of still maturity of use cases and knowledge in how to go through certain things. And so this is primarily the fault of, when you look at mid-sized to big financial institutions, the CTOs are usually people, old school, let's call it, okay? They really don't have, they had to jump into generative AI. They've been there for 10 years. And Gen AI just, 3 years ago, landed on their desk. And most of them, they don't even understand it. They play with it, but they don't even understand it. And trust me, I've been dealing with CTOs all along, and I can tell you for sure that this is the case, okay? The second value in general that, particularly in Scalata we build, we enable people on the one end to control what they build, with our data governance, and two, to personalize it. So we give a way to personalize, control, and monitor their agentic results and platform. And so clearly we are also, in our infancy, Scalata, we've been, we released version 3, but you need to keep basically improving your software. You need to keep adding potential functionality so that the user is going to be more self-aware. It will receive cheaper ways of achieving their own goals. So that's our vision.
Thank you for that, Bruno and Christina. So let's move on to what you hinted at before, Christina, talking about how AI is not just a new kind of model, but it's a new kind of actor within the organization. You both mentioned this, right? It's interpreting abstract context, adapting to feedback, initiating actions independently. So in short, behaving less like software and more like junior analysts, as you said, Christina. So let's make it real for everyone. What's the first checkpoint if you're looking at a generative AI underwriting assistant in AI for a mid-sized bank? Where do you think people need to start, or a mistake that they should avoid? Everyone, but where's the starting point when it comes to an implementation project like this?
The big mistake that institutions have made is to not think about adopting AI in a holistic way, okay? They siloed implementations across different departments and different workflows, okay? And what happened is that this obviously landed or kind of exploding in a massive budget bill. So like big spending. Why? Because when they moved the same tech to another department, it didn't work. Basically, it's quite simply. Whereas you need to think about Gen AI, either you build your own infrastructure from scratch, and you can't do it because it's too expensive, okay? Or you add a digital layer, that can connect to your backend easily, remap it, and then provide you with, a UI that enables you to not obviously revolutionize, change completely what you do every day, with Excel, email, your PDF documents, your portfolio management tools, whatever, you name it. But basically supports you, enables you to obviously do more. I see generative AI, first of all, I reiterate this, not as a replacement of humans. I see generative AI as empowering people, to do more, to actually, be more efficient, more effective in their daily jobs, to produce more, okay? But the reason why we haven't seen, that's the objective today, these productivity gains, is because people are not really using it. They say they're using it, but they're not really using AI in the proper way. So generative AI is not really 100% penetrated specific use cases of departments.
Thank you, Bruno. And it'll be really great to be able to visualize that and see that in real time. Christina, you've said that AI is acting like a high-performing employee, literally, and it's like you hire an analyst and sit them at the desk and you say, good luck, right? You don't do that. You supervise their first decisions and review their judgment. So let's see what oversight in practice looks like.
Yeah, 100%. I am really big on practical takeaways when I give talks or do webinars. So if we're talking about, AI governance, generally, what does that mean for you when you go back to your desk? Some of the points I did make earlier, but ensure that every decision, every override, pretty much everything you're doing is logged. So if you're a compliance person, you're used to doing things like KYC and transaction monitoring, and you're working with a reg tech company, over probably on the right side of the platform in your dashboard, you've got a little audit log that's, trailing everything you're doing and every decision you're making. And if you're, reviewing an alert or a case, you're documenting why you're making the decision you're making. Apply that to everything that you're doing, with AI. Don't just document outcomes. And this is something, I train compliance officers on for all areas of compliance, but document your reasoning as well. Even if you have a notebook next to you or a running Google Doc that's just called Compliance Journal, AI Journal, if you're making decisions around things, I guarantee you're going to be asked about those decisions in your audits, in your regulatory exams. You might not remember why you made the decision you did at the time, so documenting your reasoning will only ever help you. Choose a fixed cadence at which to review, AI performance, depending on your risk tolerance, your risk appetite. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? It has to be, a built-in workflow, just like you're adjusting your risk levels, for your customer. We'll probably get to the point at some point in the future where that's maybe done, a little more on an automated basis. But for now, when it comes to AI, a lot of this is, we're reinventing the wheel, and a lot of this is manual for the moment. Any change to the model or prompt layer also has to be documented like a policy change. I cannot stress that enough. So, just for a practical example, we're always seeing a new model of ChatGPT being rolled out, 4.0, it's now at 5.1. Document the version you are using, if you're using, you know, something from January through May and then you know, updates come out, make sure you document that because there's different logic and different algorithms being used, different data inputs. You know, you want to be able to tie your work back to the model you were using at the time. And escalation should be tracked the same way you would track, you know, analyst escalations. Um, if somebody is having, you know, issues with the system at hand, you know, I talked before, what is the workflow for that? And make sure you're tracking things. Effectively, what you need to be doing is a lot of tracking. Um, there's a lot of manual inputs at this point in time. I'll get into it a little bit later, but I've been developing, you know, through Rayco, a framework and a system that is meant to at least help keep you organized in a lot of this because it is a lot to be getting on with. But unfortunately, it is necessary. And, you know, next year in 2026, I fully anticipate, you know, during your regulatory exams, you're going to be asked about this stuff.
Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was terrific.